Have a quick look at Elon Musk talking about cleaning up the Social Security database, which sees people aged 150 and older still receiving Social Security benefits and 11-year-olds receiving government grants for business.
Why are the 20 million people who are definitely dead marked as alive in the Social Security database? Why were hundreds of millions of dollars of small business administration loans were given out to people aged 11 and under, according to the Social Security? I mean, like, these must be some very enterprising 8-year-olds, you know.
And some pretty strong 150-year-olds.
Yes, exactly. As the president said, you know, we have an enormous number of people marked as alive who are 160. He didn't know the country was that healthy.
It's funny, but it's only funny because it's so outrageous that things could have got to such a state, Liz.
Indeed. And speaking of what a state they're in, you would have heard us talk about the fact that USAID was one of the government departments that had fallen foul of DOGE in a big way. The Trump administration was going line by line through these ridiculous amounts of money being sent overseas for projects that made absolutely no sense. You would have seen the footage of Trump reeling off the most laughable of those entries during his speech to Congress last week. Utterly ridiculous. Although I got to say, the $8 million for transgender mice was actually for transgenic mice. So some of them you're like, oh, wait, should we fact check these? Because transgenic mice are basically mice who have had their DNA altered, and they are very much used and incredibly important in terms of doing different trials while researchers figure out different diseases. So I think that got a lot of people going, hang on a minute, how many of these do we need to check for fact check?
When they start doing it for gender medicine, then they're transgender mice. So it can be one and the same.
Indeed, but get this. The Trump administration has now advised they are cancelling 83% of the programs USAID was sponsoring. Get this tweet from Marco Rubio, who's Secretary of State. He said, after a 6-week review, we are officially cancelling 83% of the programs at USAID. The 5,200 contracts that are now cancelled spent tens of billions of dollars in ways that did not serve and in some cases even harmed the core national interests of the United States. In consultation with Congress, we intend for the remaining 18% of programs we are keeping, approximately 1,000, to now be administered more effectively under the State Department. Goody gumdrops, I say. USAID has been a front for the CIA for ages, which is incredibly ironic, given it was set up as kind of a stopgap to the CIA. JFK wanted some sort of levers of power to be checked within the CIA during Alan Dulles' term. Gosh, mate, if you've ever read the book, The Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot, you know what I'm talking about. So JFK actually set up this organisation to try and curb this kind of expenditure. And here we are in 2025, just finding out the extent to which that very organisation has been jimmied to do the exact opposite.
And it was well in excess of like $40 billion that they're doling out of American taxpayer money. The reaction to the Trump administration's cuts has been enlightening. Many people outraged that money is no longer being sent to they're funding the BBC,
yes,
and other places.
Lots of media.
It's this interesting attitude of people all around the world that somehow they are entitled to US taxpayer money, and that the US taxpayer is supposed to carry all of these organisations right around the world. And there's been, of course, the outcry say, well, you know, kids are going to die and diseases will go uncured. It'll just be interesting to see which nations step up to fill the void of this urgently required funding that the Trump administration is cutting. If these transgenic mice are so important, that I'm sure the Albanese government or, the new Canadian Prime Minister or someone will step up to the plate. But I reckon that won't be the case.